I'm gonna put it in the freezer. It'd be nice. Put one in the freezer, one in the refrigerator.
Magua, Panua Jerusalem, stand up face Jews. Blessing of the new moon. Barakata Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh, Ashereh, Natananawe, Hachadash, Bashalawam, Tawada, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the new moon and peace. Thank you, so be it. Ta'alim Ma'ar Shirayim Lachad, Psalms 121. Anya Rayam Yayim Yim Oh Harim Mayan Yabawa Azaria Yabawa Mayahu Shashad Shemayim Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yela Yanawam Shashwa Marka Hanad La Yanawam Wala Yashan Shashumar Yashrala Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayub Yad Yim Yawamam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makab Rai Yashamar Napashya Yahweh Yashamar Hawalakya Wabawaya My fa wa aid I will Basham Yahweh Shef Wada Amen.
This is the book of Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharallah, hero Israel. Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6 and verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Fapalah Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Matthew 6 and 9. Abinawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shamka Yahweh Malakwatka Taba'a Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Baratiza Kabashemayim Latalanawa Latam Yawam Zad Wasalaklanawa Kabawap nawa, Kasalak nawa, Kabawat yanawa, Wala Abiyar nawa, O Messiah one, Abba Hawashai nawa, Murai Kaya Laka, Hamalakwat, Wa Allah, Wa Thaparat, Wa Walam, Amen.
Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner, therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai Matazawab, the Ten Commandments. La'ab, Yahayab, Lakab, Alahayim, Akarim, Alpanyab, La'ab, Thaishab, Lakab, Paso, Wala'ab, Thayabadam, La'ab, Talakwakaf, Shamwab, Yahawab, Alahayakab, Lashawab, Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabath, Lakodashwab, Kabad, Abiyakab, Wa Amakab, La'ab, Taratazak, La'ab, Tana'ap, La'ab, Daganab, La'ab, Thainad, Shakur, La'ab, Takhamad, Ko, Asherab, Lara'ayakab, Amen.
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 20 and verse 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless in taking his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And all the people.
Amen. Yeshabah, be seated. Let's say 11 commandments. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asheranah, and Al Paria, Gapan, Tuada, Aman. La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of divine, thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. I'm Madwa, Planyway Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatah Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa'eh, Aliyawan, Malak, Shao, Shamayim, Warataza, Wakal, Dabarim, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahaweh, Adawanawe, Ahabnawe, Hapaleh, Yawaitaza, Yahawisha, Zakarnawe, Yahweh, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yasha'ale, Izarnawe, Bana, Wasap, Yasha'ale, Oh, Nanawe, Yamyan, Aitha, Kayawumyam, Makwadam, Babakusha, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Maganawa, Rapharnawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Bakur, Shalak, Haroka, Shao, Yawashay, Lanawa, Lamadnawa, Rabiam, Kakamay, Thabawana, Wada Aith, Show the Barka Basham Yahosha the water them yet why willam Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahushua to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahushua, I thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua that gives to us the law. Barak atah Yahweh, ba'ashem Yahushua, asherat, natan lanawa, hatawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua that gives to us light to see. Barak atah Yahweh, ba'ashem Yahushua, asherat, natan lanawa, awar, larawat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barak atah Yahweh, ba'ashem Yahushua, asherat, natan lanawa, hasheman, salah. Quran, hayo, la korab, ha'aim, yishabah, be seated. Okay, so Shalom Yasharallah.
Shalom.
All right, so Shalom everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching on live stream, and Shalom everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Ha Yasharallah Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found throughout the Americas, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel. And that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, and religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in this Bible, given to us by Moses initially. But now we come out of this lower state that we fall into by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ, our mediator, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, and who also kept the holy days of the Lord. And one of those holy days among the rest of them, what we're keeping tonight, which is the new moon. So right now we're keeping the new moon holy, as we've seen our forefathers do throughout the scriptures, whether it was Old, New Testament, or Apocrypha. And as our particular branch of Christ does, we go through a service, we review over scriptures pertaining to the new moon, as well as other things as needed. And we're in the 5th new moon of the year for keeping count, as far as us being in the summer months. Okay. And as you can see here, I put it in the down below. We got the Shar Chadash, that's the first 2 words. Then you have Kamayashia, which is the way you say it in the Hebrew, which is 5th. Then I have Yasha Allah, that's the last word there, Israel, which our name Israel is important. When you translate it, it means he is a prince of power, or she is a princess of power. And being a prince of power, the name being given to our forefather Jacob after he wrestled with the angel, is important for what we're going to talk about after we cover the new moon scriptures, which you'll see when we get there. All right. And my name is Nabiel Zerubbabel. I have the pleasure of going through the service with you guys this evening. All thanks to the Most High in Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. You can write down in your records, according to the Gregorian calendar, it's July 27th, 2022. But according to our calendar, the solar lunar calendar, it would be the 5th month and the 1st day. Once again, the 5th month and the 1st day. Okay. So let's start where we usually start. Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10. Usually the first new moon verse we find or that we get to if we don't start back in the beginning of Genesis. But Numbers chapter 10 in verse 10, which goes into what? Our ancestors, when we were in the wilderness, where the Most High had Moses as our leader at this time, right? And how we were arranging all of our tribes out in the wilderness when we made different movements. So that's what's going on here in this book of Numbers. Then he tells them this. He tells me the importance of using trumpets as a means to call assemblies, as well as to notify Israel as we're moving in large groups, communication with them over a wide distance, as we use trumpets to do this. Not just the shawapar, or what they call in Yiddish the shofar or ram's horn, but then we even made trumpets out of silver. And you read above in this chapter. Here's what it says in Numbers chapter 10, verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, ye shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings, and over the sacrifice of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God. So the Most High gave us the laws of sacrifice at this point. He's letting us know not only which offerings to do, but he gave us instructions on how each of those are done and how they can be done, as far as a peace offering, as far as a burnt offering. He's also telling us when to do them. What do we see in that list? It says in the beginning of your month. So the new moon represents the beginning of the month. Before I go to the example we usually go to of our forefathers keeping the new moon in Samuel, let's just go back to the beginning. Go to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. And Gabar, if you could read that, Baba Gushan.
All right, this is the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years.
Right. So God said, and you see in the Hebrew, you'll see the word Elohim, which means gods or powers, right? Because it was a group. The Most High, of course, being at the top of this group. That's why they call him the Lord of Hosts. So they're talking, and he said, he's giving him instruction. Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night. He says, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So these lights that the Most High is about to create, he's going to use these things to what? Let us know what time of day we're in, what time of month we're in, right? What season we're in. But read on.
And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so.
So he gave the commandment, and then they carried forth the work to create these. The Elohim being spirit bodies, them being very powerful, they had the ability to create these magnificent physical bodies that we take note of every day, right? That we are in the earth, as far as the host of heaven, the sun, moon, and stars. We're going to see it as we read on. Read verse 16.
And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also.
Right. So now, out of all those lights, you have two lights that stand out. A greater one to rule the day, a lesser one to rule the night, right? Being the sun and moon. But then it says he made the stars also. So you have all the stars, right? That's hard to even count them all. But you'll see if you look in the night sky on a clear night, you'll see them in how they're arranged and how they'll move position. Read on in 17.
And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth,
Keep going.
and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good.
Right. So he used them on this level to show what difference between the light from the darkness, from the day and the night. Right. So he used them for us to give us that distinction between light and dark. Even if we had light and dark already, going back to day one, he used these lights for us here to distinguish between the light, the daytime, or the night, or the dark. I should say the dark or the nighttime. And you can finish up at 19 and we'll go on.
And the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
Right. To let you know, the evening, which is when the day begins, according to the Most High. In the morning, which is the daytime that follows, leading up to the next evening. That was the fourth day. So that's what was done on day 4. Go throughout this chapter, you'll see what the Most High did during the 6 days of creation. And then when he did on the 7th day. All right. So let's go to our forefathers keeping this holy day. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 20. 1 Samuel chapter 20. In verse 5. And Yakazakala, if you could read that, Baba Kusha, or please. Once you have it, 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 5.
Now, 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is a new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, and I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at evening.
Right. So now David and Jonathan are talking. Right. Jonathan being the son of Saul, who was king at this time. David being Saul's armor bearer. And they were very close when you read in the chapters previous. David said to Jonathan, tomorrow is the new moon. I should not fail to sit with the king at meat, since he was now part of his household. As the king had that power to command sons and daughters throughout Israel to be part of his court, to do different things, to tend to his court, whether it be working in the kitchen or working as a servant in other areas, right? Fighting in his army, etc., etc. That's why he's saying, let me hide myself in the field until the third day at evening, because normally he would sit down with them. But he's not, because right now Saul has an evil spirit that troubles him. And it comes on him to where he wants to slay David without a cause. Right? It's there to help feed that evil desire to kill his brother without cause. Read on, actually jump down to verse 24.
1 Samuel 20 and verse 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon comes, the king set him down to eat meat.
Right. So now the new moon came in, like we're keeping tonight. It says the king sat him down to eat meat. Read on.
Verse 25. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty.
So the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even a seat by the wall. And he sat in a certain seat, right? Like at the head of the table, which was by the wall. It says, and Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side. So his son Jonathan was there. Abner, his general, was there. It says, and David's place was empty. Because in verse 24, it tells us he hid himself in the field, so he's not there. You read above, as we did. Jonathan knows why he's not there, but Saul doesn't. That's why Saul thinks this. Read verse 26.
Verse 26. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had fallen on him, had befallen him, and he is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
Right. So Saul just thought, that's kind of weird that he's not here. But I'm thinking the reason is because he's pretty diligent. Something may have befallen. Perhaps he's just not clean, right? Because he knew David to be a lawful man. So he said, okay, he's probably just not coming together for the holy feast because he's unclean, which is part of the law. If you are unclean, you can't come together for solemn assemblies. You have to wait till the days of your uncleanness are finished, and you do whatever is necessary, right? Whether it's due to a dead body or ejaculation or menstrual cycle, right? Or childbirth, right? Certain things are specific to men as far as what makes them unclean versus women, what makes them unclean. Some things you can become unclean regardless whether you're a man or woman. Certain things can make you unclean. So regardless of the reason, that's what Saul thinks. That's why he's not here. But read on in verse 27.
Verse 27. It came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to me, neither yesterday nor today?
Right. So it says it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month. So I like this verse because we talk about the beginning of the months. Folks might argue, right, and say, well, we keep our beginning of the month according to the calendar that we deal with now. But right here, it lets you know without a shadow of a doubt that the beginning of the month is indeed the new moon, right? That's why it says on the morrow, which was the second day of the month. Because the morrow after the new moon was the second day of the month, that means that the new moon had to be the first day of the month. See?
Now, who makes that argument?
Who makes that argument?
Yeah, what group makes that argument that the new moon is not the first day of the month?
First time I heard it, I think brother attributed it to teachings at the camp IUIC. They teach that.
Yeah.
I think that's what the elder was talking about a couple Fridays ago, going into. They got certain camps that'll teach the new moon begins the week. Camps that teach that the new moon is a full moon. Got camps that teach, other stuff.
Yeah, that's what I thought they did. Full moon. I never heard the other ones.
Yeah, I think he said GMS teach that. The camp GMS, if I'm not mistaken. As far as the new moon beginning the week, also, we discussed that too. We went through the reasoning behind that, where we said if we know on average a lunar month, right, is 29 and a half days on average, which means usually it's going to be anywhere between 28 to 30 days. Usually 29 or 30 days long, right? But 29 and a half on average. That means what? Every week you're going to have, 7 days, right? So a month on, or give or take 4 days, give or take a couple days, right? At the full, and you can track where you're at in the month every week. So right now we're on a Wednesday. So we know around this time next week, the first week would have gone by. We could look in the sky and see the first half. 2 weeks goes by, right? 2 Wednesdays from now, we can look up in the sky and expect to see a full moon. It's clear. 3 weeks, same thing. You have this, what they call the last half, the other half of the moon lit. And then after that, you'll begin to see just what? A little bit of a crescent. And we're getting back to the moon where it's completely dark like it is now. But give or take a couple days, because 7 times 4 is what?
28.
Right. So the question we ask is, if the new moon on average is 29 and a half days, what do you do with the extra day? That means that every month, if you believe that philosophy, that the new moon begins the week, you got an 8th or a 9th day that's left over. What do you do with that extra day or two? I never read anywhere about there being 8 days in the week or 9 days in the week. So these are just things we really have to question when we propose certain ideas or concepts. But yeah, that was just what we were talking about. We were going through those things. I think it was not last Friday, but the Friday before we were going into that. But let's go to Psalms chapter 81. Psalms chapter 81. I'm going to read 1 to 4. So Psalms chapter 81 and verse 1, it reads, "Sing aloud unto power our strength, make a joyful noise unto the power of Jacob." Right? Showing you that the God or power is what? Pertaining to Jacob. Jacob being the chosen nation. It says in verse 2, "Take a psalm and bring hither the timbrel, the pleasant harp with the psaltery." So take these different musical instruments, right? And use them during this time, right? To make this joyful noise or to sing aloud to power our strength. We did this individually. We even did this as far as arrangements too. And we see even now in our ignorance, Israel has been scattered throughout the Americas. We'll do this. We'll have a choir set up in the church. But unfortunately, we won't be singing praise with understanding, right? We'll be singing praises according to Christianity or the doctrine of Christianity, right? Which some of those songs are actually good if we understood the meaning really behind them and that who salvation was actually for. But then it says in verse 3, "Blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day." So that's what we did tonight before we started. We have an example of a trumpet here, which is a shawapar in the Hebrew, just means ram's horn. So we sounded this off at the time appointed during the time of the new moon. It says in verse 4, "For this was a statute for Israel and a law of the God of Jacob." So it wasn't just something that we decided to do when we wanted to. No, this was a law. This was a commandment to keep the new moon, right? So it's not like a feast that you just decide, okay, let's just do it whenever. No, we always were supposed to keep this. This keeps us in sync with the creation, keeps us in sync with nature, right? Because every time we keep a new moon, we're mindful of where we're at in the year. So we can make sure we have things in place as the next month comes in, as the next season comes in. All right, so that was Psalms 81, 1 to 4. And then let's get this one too. Go to Isaiah chapter 66. Isaiah chapter 66. In verse 23. And Yakazakala, if you could read that, Baba Kushan. Isaiah 66 in verse 23.
Isaiah 66 and verse 23. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord.
Right. So even according to the future prophecy, right? It's showing us that this is going to come a time where all flesh will come to keep the new moon and the Sabbath. This hasn't happened yet. This is still to take place. So this celebration of the new moon isn't just something that's passe or that's, over and done with. I know we had that conversation with that brother at the camp, right, last week, where he kept trying to, proclaim that the laws are no more. We don't have to deal with those laws anymore. We try to convey to him, nope, we're still responsible for keeping the holy days, no matter where we've been scattered to, right? Acknowledging who we are and what's required of us. Christ didn't change that. All Christ changed was what? He took away the curse of the law, meaning what? If we break the law, we're supposed to be put to death before. Him dying on the cross removed that curse to where now we can go through his blood and what? Obtain forgiveness. That's the only difference. But we're still responsible for keeping these holy days. So let's get this one in the bar. If you can get this or read this. Also to read this one too, the folks you're talking to about this for the first time, especially if they're so-called Christian, to show that what, even though it's not, talked about over and over again, because it shouldn't have to be talked about over and over again, it's still mentioned when Paul writes his letter to the brothers and sisters in Colossae. Because you always hear this pushback. Oh, that's the Old Testament. You don't have to deal with that anymore. Right? When we know Christ comes in the volume of the book, as it says in Psalms, as it also says in Hebrews, 40 and 7, 10 and 7, respectively. So now Colossians chapter 2, if you could read 16 and also read 17, which is going to speak to kind of what we read in Isaiah 66 as far as future prophecy.
This is the book of Colossians, chapter 2, and verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days.
Right. So Paul is writing this letter to our people that were in Colossae, telling them what? Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink, meaning what you eat, whether or not it's lawful, and how much of it you do eat if it is lawful, right? Same thing with drink. If it's lawful, because the law talks about things you can and can't drink, and then certain things you can only drink a certain amount, right? So no man should judge you in these things, meaning you should be on your P's and Q's. You should be making sure you're eating and drinking according to righteousness. Then it says, or in respect of an holy day. So like a feast day. Then it says, or of the new moon, which we're keeping right now, or the Sabbath day, which we keep every seventh day of the week. And then check out verse 17.
Which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ.
Which are a shadow of things to come. Because like we read in Isaiah 66, and there's other prophecies, talk about what? How the law is going to be what? Implemented throughout the earth, right? And it's going to emanate from Israel and from Jerusalem. And you read other prophecies. But the actual Israelites were going to be in the land. Whoever of us that make it, that are part of the chosen, we're going to be the ones to administer that justice. Joint heirs with Christ, who's going to be at the helm of the ship, so to speak, running the show, right? To where everyone will know, oh, okay, this is what time we're supposed to do. We're supposed to keep the Sabbath. Oh, okay, this is when and why we keep the new moon. This is when and why we keep these holy days, right? Just like in the world, everyone knows about the heathen and what their customs are, especially Esau's customs. A lot of them are borrowed from other nations that ruled before him. He just changes the name or changes the person that's on the face, changes the face of the day. Yeah, everyone in the world is going to know about the Most High's laws. So we're ahead of the curve, doing what most of the world's going to do in the future. But we're doing it already now. So a hand up.
Yeah, when you said let no man judge you on that, when you read that, now you said on whether it's lawful to eat or unlawful to eat. If it's unlawful to eat, then a man can tell you that that's unlawful, right?
Right. But he's telling them no one should be saying to you, hey, what are you doing eating that? That's unclean.
Why should he say that?
Because he's supposed to be in the spirit.
Who's supposed to be in the spirit?
The brothers and sisters that are in Colossae that he's writing this letter to. These are letters that are giving them counsel on how to conduct themselves. Make sure that you guys are keeping the commandments.
So he's telling the people, the brothers and sisters at Colossians, don't let nobody judge you on eating an unclean thing.
Mm-hmm. For example, it just says in meat or in drink. I was just making it more clear for you guys. I mean, whatever you eat, you should be eating the things that are lawful. And if it is lawful, you shouldn't be a glutton, right?
Okay.
Or for drink, you should only drink things that are lawful. Like the law goes, not drink. You can't drink blood.
Oh, okay. Like blood. Okay.
But then things you can drink, like strong drink, like wine, you can't overindulge. Then you become a drunkard. So no one should be saying, yo, what are you doing? He did that in other letters too. Like you're reading in the letters he wrote to the Corinth church, and that was in Corinth. He was talking about, I heard what was going on at your guys' church. You had some man sleeping with his father's wife. What the hell is that? What are y'all doing? You know, for example.
So he's just saying don't be caught doing that.
Right. And as far as being spiritual, remember this. I said it already, but just to read this real quick before we continue on. But I gave you Colossians 2, 16 and 17. But what I'm talking about, just read 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 15 real quick.
You said verse 16?
First chapter 2, verse 15.
Y'all Kazak reading that?
I want you to read this,
Okay.
just based on what you were asking.
All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 15. But he that is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is judge of no man.
So same idea, just in a different letter. But Paul was telling them too, right? He that is spiritual judgeth all things, right? When it comes to his or her decision making, right? That's what judging means, right? To discern. On a milk level, right from wrong, as you get more into the meat, greater matters, not just small matters. It's not just right and wrong. It's about, doing well versus doing better. Like we talk about with the milk, choosing the right answer. When you're in grade school and middle school, when you get to high school and college, it goes from choosing the right and wrong, from choosing the best answer, right? To where you'll see 2 or 3 answers, and you have to figure out of those different answers which one's the best one. Okay. What were you saying? 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 15. So I like to use this also to show you can judge, but you can't condemn. In other words, I'm in no position to tell you or anybody else, or even tell myself, yeah, I'm going to be part of the 2/3. Right? When Christ comes back, I'm going to be with those that are cast off. I'm in no position to do that. Time has to tell that. But I can judge based on what I observe, right? When I see, when it comes to my brother, when it comes to his words and deeds, if he's saying or doing something that goes against commandment, I can say, hey, brother, sister, if you stay doing that, what you're saying, what you're doing right now, that's going against the scriptures, and Christ comes back, you're going to be in trouble. But if you repent, stop doing it, start doing the right thing, you'll be all right. So that's judging. But I'm not condemning my brother or sister. I'm just judging them based on what the scriptures say. But it says spiritual. So spiritual can be, I see your hand. Spiritual can be very, what do you call it? Nondescript. It's just like, what does that mean? So read this to go with 1 Corinthians 2:15. Spiritual that Paul's talking about here, you can link this with Romans. Romans chapter 7 and verse 14. And Yakaza, you can read that one. Romans chapter 7 and verse 14. Okay, there's a question about 1 Corinthians 2:15 saying spiritual. Because we use that to, usually catch folks, because you'll hear that saying a lot, right? When we bring out the Bible, we're out there teaching at camp or individual one-on-one, people will say, brother, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. I'm more spiritual. You're like, oh, you're spiritual. Right. Oh, you're spiritual. Oh, that's good. Okay. So get that verse. You're taking 1 Corinthians 2:15. People say, let me finish what I'm saying. People will say, oh, I'm spiritual. And we say, yeah, that's a good step. That's a step in the right direction, because the religions of the world are of man, right? But when we talk about being spiritual from a righteous standpoint, based on the scriptures, yeah, that's the direction you want to go. So 1 Corinthians 2:15 is a nice response you can use to the I'm spiritual statement that you'll hear people say. Like I said, you'll be surprised, you do this longer and longer. It's almost like scripted responses. You hear certain things over and over again. You already know what verse to line up. And the person that you're dealing with is just shocked. And it's like, how could you know that? How could you know to get that verse? It's like, because you're not as unique as you think. Temptation is common to man. When you see the same temptations over and over again, where you know how to respond. But you can read that in Romans.
Romans chapter 7, verse 14. And we know the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin.
Right. So Paul here says in his letter to the Romans, for we know that the law is spiritual. I am carnal, or of the flesh, sold under sin. Right? Because our flesh, has the desire to sin. But if we're dealing with the law, which is spiritual, we can keep under our body and bring it under subjection, like Paul also said. Right? That can take practice. First, you try to obey, and if that doesn't work, then you pray. That still doesn't work, then you fast on it. When it comes to righteous behaviors you're trying to institute. But yeah, those are two verses to kind of go along with what you asked there, Kabar. But with that said, let's touch on what you'll see in the title, which is levels of power, right? So first I want to deal with power without, meaning outside, as opposed to power within. So the baseline verse I like to go to, and that is easily overlooked because there's a lot of history in the scriptures. Sometimes you'll see certain stories, you might read through them and go, oh, okay, this is what so-and-so said or did at this time. You look a little closer, you'll say, oh, wow, there's something here I can use. Or I can use this here to actually give me clarity for what's going on in this other situation, or what's going on even on right now. Because where we're about to go in Genesis, can parallel to kind of what we see happening now with the sad state of affairs when it comes to the world governments and the economies and how they're in tough shape. Because we're in a tough spot in this time we're about to read here with Joseph back in Genesis 47. This being on the time of the years of famine, right? As we see that happening right now, as per the prophecy Christ gave us, right? famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, wars, rumors of wars. Many saying that they're Christ shall deceive many, right? So Genesis 47. I'm going to start at verse 13. So we're going to go through this reading here, and then we'll pull other verses as we talk about different forms or levels of power, right? We'll start at the base level, which is what we're about to read here. It says in Genesis 47 and 13, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore. So you read above, in earlier on in this chapter, in the back chapter, the Most High gave Joseph a vision, right? He said it's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of harshness, right? So during the 7 years of plenty, make sure you stack up for the rainy days ahead, right? Which Joseph did in wisdom, as he was able to interpret dreams of those that were in authority amongst Mizraim or the Egyptians. He was elevated to where he was put in a very high position, top position over all Egypt. He was like the equivalent of like a prime minister, right? So it says, for the famine was very sore, set the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine, right? That being the reason why he had a reunion with his brothers who sold him into slavery, right? Many years before. But now they were compelled to come to Egypt, and then by chance they were running to their brother there, right? Who was in a position of authority due to the famine being in Egypt and in the surrounding areas, which was Canaan, which is where his brothers were. Now, how did Joseph deal being in a position of authority when it came to these austere times? It says in verse 14, and Joseph gathered together all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. We played that video before, which is kind of interesting. Is a video, I'm thinking it should still be on YouTube, but it was going into the archaeology behind what they think was these storage areas where Joseph, when he was alive, he stored the grain. There's like a short video where they do the archaeology, and they show these big like pits that they created between the stones in a certain area in Egypt, where they think that Joseph stored up all this extra grain to provide for everyone during the time of the 7 years of famine. So they even show the archaeology behind what was built, just to show that the Bible is not just some fairy tale. No, it's a book of record, right? A book of history that aligns with a lot of archaeology that we see. It says, Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Now check this out. It says, when the money failed in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth, right? So if you only have a certain amount of money in circulation, eventually it's going to run out, right? Well, it should run out if everybody's using their money to buy what? Goods and or services. So this is the first level of power, right? Which is money, or we could call it world currencies, right? So to link with 14 and 15, you can link Ecclesiastes Ecclesiastes chapter 10 in verse 19. Each of these levels we could do a class on, but that's not our point tonight. The point is just to arrange these things in a way to where it's easy to separate one from the other and see what one glory of one has versus the glory of the other has. And when you understand these levels of power, we're going over one by one, it'll be easier for you to understand current events as they take place, where we're doing certain history. It'll give you a clear insight into, you do history on rise and fall of empires and pretty much how they went about gaining these levels of power, right, when they took authority. So it's a way to clarify what sometimes is presented as complicated when it really isn't. Power isn't a complicated thing. It can just be difficult to maintain power once you have it, right? To grow and maintain power can be difficult. But in and of itself, it's not really a complicated concept, whether it was ancient times or now. Even technology that we have now, with the industrial age, information age, is still subject to these levels of power. So Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 19. Yakaza, I guess you can read that. Ecclesiastes, if I said Ecclesiasticus, forgive me. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 19. Chapter 10 and verse 19. Read nice and loud so folks on teleconference can hear you.
Ecclesiastes 10, verse 19. They that fear the Lord are as sure of seed, and they that love him in an honorable plan. They that regard not.
No, that's not it.
That's not it. It's not the verse.
No. Ecclesiastes 10 and 19. Ecclesiastes is after Proverbs. That's why I said, if I said Ecclesiasticus, my apologies. Ecclesiastes 10 and 19. I think you're reading Ecclesiasticus. Try to read a little bit louder just so that folks can hear.
Ecclesiastes 10, verse 19. A peace is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answers all things.
Right. So now it's written here, a feast is made for laughter, right? Like we have a solemn feast we gather together, but then you also have just feasts that people might set up for different occasions, right? It says, and wine maketh merry, right? Which it does. Not over drunk And this is also, that precept is good to show that drinking wine isn't wicked. It's only wicked when you become a drunkard by it. But then the last precept is what we want, which is, but money answereth all things. You see? So money answereth all things. Meaning money, when used according to righteousness, is power, right? It can be used to help, to fix a situation, right? That's why it says this. Also go to, in the same book, jump to a verse, chapter 7, and let's read 11 and 12 as well. And then we'll move on and go back to Genesis and go to the next level.
Ecclesiastes 7. I have seen servants.
Verse 11.
Surely the servant will fight without.
No. Chapter 7, verse 11. I mean, the same book.
Same book.
I meant the same book. If I said the same chapter, I meant to say the same book. Chapter 7 and verse 11.
Wisdom is good and inheritance. By there is profit to none that see the sun.
So it says wisdom is good with an inheritance, right? Meaning some type of wealth, right? And by it, there is profit to them that see the sun, right? People that are alive, that are living, right? That wake up every day. But now check out what verse 12 says.
For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giving life to none that have it.
Right. So he says, for wisdom is a defense and money is a defense. Then he says, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Right. So it's about putting them in their proper place, their proper perspective. So money isn't evil no more than an axe is evil, right? It's just a tool, right? It's a means of exchange. Now, what you use it for can either be for good or for evil, right? That's the difference. So I always use that example because you see that in the scriptures where it talks about, something that money can buy, which is the next level. Be it a finished product or the raw materials used to make a finished product. That can be used for good or for evil. An axe could be used to build a house, right? To keep you warm or to house somebody in. An axe can also be used to what? Murder your brother. So the axe is what it is, right? It's just a resource. But now, what are you using it for? That goes into whether now it's made righteous or made wicked. It's all about the wielder. And you hear that cliche expression, right? When they talk about, gun laws and gun controls, that and the third. It's the violence behind the gun violence. That's the thing you have to really get at, right? Because you even hear them say that expression, which is true. Guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? To get into violence behind why people are using guns for these things, right? To really get at the root cause of, the issues around guns. Because the violence is still there. If you get rid of all the guns, it won't matter. Because that violence in the spirit of man and woman will still be there to wield against each other. So that's money, right? The means of exchange. So it's a tool. It's not evil, but it can be used for evil, just like it can be used for good. So we're talking about, U.S. dollar or precious, what do you call it? The euro or whatever these currencies are that you have out there in ancient times and even in modern times, whatever you use for money. I think we were reading that in the Sabbath service, right, about salt. How salt was used in Roman times And that's where the word salary comes from. I think that came up when we were reading in Maccabees, right? So that's all that first level of power, right? When we talk about money. But now let's go back to Genesis 47, and I'll read this. Let's see the next level. So now I'm in 47. Now I'm in verse 16. So I already read 13 to 15. Now I'm in 16. It says, and Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. So Joseph is wise in that he knows that what, even during hard times, if people need the necessity, which is, food, which he had plenty of during that famine that was stacked up, he knew it could only be exchanged for something that had value, intrinsic value. Right? He didn't do what you see Esau doing, right, where they will print money, right, and increase the money supply, and then use inflation as a weapon or a tool to, bankrupt entire countries, companies, right, entire societies, and then had these short and long-term debt cycles, right, as opposed to just what productivity growth, which is what you would see in a righteous environment, which would be constant growth because you're dealing with the creation properly, and you're increasing in your wealth and riches, all at the right time, as opposed to just printing money to create the illusion of what you have more, or have more to buy with, I should say. So now when it comes to verse 16 and 17, we read 17 too. And they bought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. Right? So always using something that what serves as a means of exchange that actually has value. Because you don't have to be an economist to know the more you just print money, right? And it's not backed by an actual resource. And if the prices just fluctuate based on the ebb and flow of money supply, that what eventually, with every dollar that you print, it's going to be worth less and less, right? Whatever a dollar could buy, if you print two without having something of value behind it, now it's going to take $2 to buy that same thing that it once took $1. So this is the next level, which is resources, right? Which could be living in or non-living resources, right? These are the things that money can buy. So in short, the second level you can just say is plants, animals, minerals, right? But a verse we can go to see these, right, or see examples of these. We can go to Genesis chapter 13. So whole Genesis 47, go to Genesis chapter 13. To our forefather Abraham, and we'll see the resources that he had, right? Genesis chapter 13 and verse 2, and Gabar, if you could read that, Baba Kushan.
All right, this is the book of Genesis, chapter 13 and verse 2. And Abraham was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold.
Right, so straightforward, right? So these are the things that money can buy, right? Resources, living resources, non-living resources, plants, animals, minerals, right? So this was in Abram's possession. And we see this even before him being called by the Lord to become a father of many nations, that he was a man of means, right? He even had the means to get his nephew Lot back after he was captured when the nations back then were going to war with each other. It tells you how he even had another level beyond that, which we'll get to. But we'll come back to this. But I just want to talk about this level, which is resources. But go to Zechariah, whole Genesis 47. But go to Zechariah chapter 9. Zechariah chapter 9. You can just read verse 3.
Who's reading that?
You're reading that.
Okay, that's Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 3. And Tyrus did build herself a stronghold, and heaped up silver as the dust, and fine gold as the mire of the streets.
Right. So going into Tyrus, which is Tyre, which was a Hamite country initially, that was known or very prominent when it came to trade, because their country is right there along the coast. So you'll see references to Tyrus or Tyre, spelled Tyrus here, but same as Tyre and Zidon, and how they were proficient in trade, especially by sea. And we see that today. Much trade is still done by sea and done at ports, right? When it comes to resources, whether you're a company or a country, you'll take your resources, your goods to a port, whatever your country produces, and then send it off to then be bought on another market. If you don't sell it to your own people, you'll transport it somewhere else to be sold to a place or to a people that may not have that same resource you have. Then let's go to Revelation, which will come back here again. You can read that too, Kabar. Revelations chapter 18. Revelations chapter 18. And let's read 11 and 12.
This is the book of Revelations, chapter 18 and verse 11. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore.
Right. So it's a future prophecy, right? And we're beginning to get closer and really, really close to this prophecy coming to pass, leading up to when Christ makes his second coming, right? But once again, power will always be power, whether it was ancient times or the current times. But it's saying that it's going to get so bad here in this government, in this beast that we're in right now, that no one's going to buy their merchandise anymore. So he's going to go into a little laundry list of some of the plants, animals, and minerals that they traded in. So we'll just read verse 12 for now, and we'll come back here and we'll read 13 a little bit later.
The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all fine wood and all manner vessels of ivory and all manner vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble.
Right, so stop there. We'll come back. But just other examples of resources, right? In short, plants, animals, minerals, right? The things that money buys, right? And sometimes, depending on the situation and in the time place, You may not even have money, but you might just go right to this level to do trade. You say, look, we don't have a means of a currency. Let's just trade for our particular resources, right? I'll trade you this plant for this animal, or vice versa, or this gold and silver for this, other thing that you have. But money as the level before that can be used to regulate how much those things will cost. Because remember, in our law, it talks about what? A just balance, a just weight, a just ephah, and a just hin, right? So we're talking about liquid measures and dry measures when it comes to plants, animals, and minerals that we have to either use or to sell or to buy. The prices shouldn't be going up and down due to inflation, deflation. No. A pound of wheat should be worth a pound of wheat. A pound of gold should cost a pound of gold. So we'll have that in the kingdom as opposed to now, where Esau keeps those kind of things in flux in order to confuse and to thwart the enemies of his own people as well as the other nations, to keep them indebted so that he can maintain his advantage. So that's level 2. Resources, which are just plants, animals, minerals. That also includes oil, whether it's oil used for cooking or whatnot, or even oil that you see them using now when it comes to use for certain machinery, right? To power certain machinery, planes, trains, automobiles, power plants, etc. So fossil fuels will be in this category as well, right? As they call them. So now, third level. Let's go back to Genesis 47. Is the place where plants, animals, and minerals are drawn from. So the third level of power, right? We got money, and we got plants, animals, minerals, or resources. Now we got the third level, which we're about to read here in Genesis 47. So now I'm in 47 and 18. Oops, that's 27. 47 and 18. I'm in the wrong chapter, so 47 and 18, it reads, and when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said, we will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also had our herds of cattle. So money's all ran out because they spent it all. And then Joseph, like I said, in wisdom, you not to print more money, which would just make it worth less. He said, okay, just use cattle as a means to exchange for food, since we're in a famine. But now check out what they say next. They're going to the next level. It says, there is not off left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. You see that? So it's kind of 2 in 1. We'll separate them. First, we'll talk about the third level, which is land, right? You can include water too, right? Because where do you get your plants, animals, and minerals that you use either for yourself, they're used for trade, as an individual or as a society? You get them from the land, or you get them from the water, whether you live by a river or by a lake or by the ocean, right? And now that we go to and fro, like the prophecy says, you could add air to this also, right? Now you have what they call airspace, right? Countries have an airspace that they'll say, and write certain laws that say, don't violate my airspace. Since we go to and fro now, like how the Elohim always did, but now per the prophecy, now we go to and fro quickly, right? Not just by land and by sea quickly, but also by air quickly now as well. So that's the third level, right? Land and sea and air. So to link with 47 and 18. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Go back to something that the Most High told us in the beginning. And we see how it rings true even to this day, right? Genesis chapter 1. In verse 26. So the Most High made the nations, us notwithstanding. He gave us this power, right? And when he made Adam, he gave them commandments on how to rule over or govern this power appropriately, right? So Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, Yakazat, you can read that, Bubba Sean. So go ahead and read
Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth.
Right. So now he's telling us what they're saying, because you're reading the Hebrew once again, it says Elohim when it says God. Let us make man in our image. So, we always go through that breakdown as far as the translation because folks will get tripped up by that, right? They'll say, okay, God, it says God singular in the English. What is he, schizophrenic? Is he just talking to himself? What's going on? But no, it's a group of them. They're talking together, right? You got the Most High at the helm. You got Christ at his right hand. And you get the other angels on the right hand, on the left hand of God, right? This is referring to them as a collective. So they said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, according to wisdom, right? It's like we always talk about the importance of image. In the Tuesday class, we're talking about this going into that prophecy pertaining to Caesar Borgia, right? And how you'll see even our people today fighting to reset or reestablish our self-image because our enemies, especially Esau, has us hating our own self-image, right? How we look on a very carnal, visceral level, and then what that means even on a spiritual level, right? As far as how wonderfully we're made. But they say, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So now he gave the nations dominion over their land, over their water that they have power over, and over the air, right? Where all those resources are found, right? In this case, it's mentioning living resources, but that's where they're drawn from. And going back to Genesis chapter 1, we read that too, right? As far as the Most High taking the animals and the creeping thing and making them from the dust of the ground. But it tells you that when it comes to the birds and the fishes, he made them out of the sea or out of the water. All right, we read that in the previous chapter. Since we're here, we might as well just get it real quick. So get Genesis. You got 26, but jump up, Yakazat. Start from verse 20.
Genesis 1, verse 20. God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creatures that have life, and the fowl may fly above the earth and in the open firmament of heaven.
Right. So let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that have life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So they were made from the water, which is kind of interesting because you see a dead bird, you'll see it'll go back into the dust, right, when it decays. But it originally wasn't made from the dust of the ground, like how other land animals are. Scriptures say that what? He took the water, the angels took the water, the H2O as we call it in chemistry, and changed those elements and made birds out of that, as well as the fish. Read on in verse 21.
Verse 21. Verse 21. And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly, and after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good.
Right. So animals in the water and the animals that would fly, like birds. We know we got certain birds that we see that are inland, even the birds that tend to be out at sea, like storks and herrings and seagulls. You tend to see those around the water. But then you have other birds you tend to see more inland, but they were all made out of the water.
The trick was stupid.
Yep. Because we always go to that story, right? Remember when Israel, we were in the wilderness, and we were, being stubborn, being rebellious. We were frustrated with the manna that the Most High blessed us with every day. He said, "Oh, it's not good enough. We want what we want. We want what we had back when we were slaves in Egypt. We had cucumbers, we had melons, we had leeks, we had this." And the Most High blessed them, but then smote them at the same time because he saw that their spirit, the way they were coming, the way they were asking, it wasn't right. But he threw us a bone, so to speak, to where there was like a body of water close where we were at that time in the wilderness. And so the Most High caused quail to come out of the water, right? So we eat quail since, the manna wasn't good enough. We were getting tired of the manna, So there's a direct example of, the Most High making the birds come out of the water, like he did in the beginning. But he did it for our sakes, us being his people, but us being stubborn, us being rebellious, us not being unappreciative. But yeah, throughout for reading those, and then read 24 and 25 also, and then we'll get the last and final level.
Verse 24. God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, the cattle, and the creeping thing, and the beasts of the earth after his kind." And it was so.
Read 25.
Verse 25. God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good.
Right. So the land, the sea, and the air, where these plants, animals, and minerals are at, Most High gave us that power as well. And that's where we see now, then and now, as long as we've had nations, how the Most High divided to nations their inheritance. And he's allowed different nations to take their dominion. And as they take dominion, you'll see borders move around, right? Landmarks get moved, get pushed back, get extended, right? To where when a nation has their time in the sun to rule, they'll have their dominion. And then it's a testament as far as how they dealt with the power that the Most High gave them to see how long they're going to have their government, how long they're going to have their empire. The most recent history, Esau has been the one to have the dominion and to have this power over land, over sea, over air, right? And we've witnessed just how he's wielded that power, right? And we've been able to take note to say, okay, has he used it for good or used it for evil? Has he used it constructively or generatively? Or has he used it destructively or degeneratively? So now we got one more, because there's one more level, at least when we talk about external power, power that's without. We got bodies, right? Which is people power, or the human resource, right? As you could call it, or as we call it today, right? So this next level is, you could say, souls of men, right? Because you really can't be here unless you have like a soul. Pretty much is like a combination of you in a body, but your spirit that's in a body. You're considered a soul, right? And your mind is the thing that operates your soul. So that's what makes you you. So when we talk about regeneration, we could talk about when you come back, you're the same spirit, but different flesh, a different man, right? So you're two different souls. So you could say John the Baptist and Elijah, they were the same spirit, but they were two different physical men, right? Because one was Elijah, the other one was John the Baptist, but they were the same spirit. So souls are a combination of a body and a spirit assigned together in that union, right? We talk about Jacob and the 70 souls, talking about all the people that left with Jacob to go into Egypt, right? Back when we were just an extended family before we became a full-fledged nation, right? Which is the time of Joseph that we're reading here in 47. So the people saying, look, let's just sell our bodies, right? So that we can at least eat. You can get these verses. Get 1 Kings chapter 21. 1 Kings 21. And verse 20. You can read that, Kabar, Baba Bashan.
All right, this is the book of 1 Kings, chapter 21 and verse 20. And Ahab said to Elijah, hast thou found me, O mine enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord.
Right. So Elijah rebuking King Ahab for how he's wielding his power. But he says that he sold himself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. So we talk about selling your soul or being a sellout, right? This is the basis for where that comes from, right? Because that's who you are. You're a soul. That's what makes you you. But now, what you do in your body and with the power the Most High has given you or blessed you with, that determines your legacy, right? If you'll be remembered as a righteous man, right? Woman, or a wicked man, woman, right? So that's what we talk about when we say selling out. He sold out to the man. This is where this comes from. Let's get that in the New Testament also real quick. Go to 2 Peter. I think we just read this not too long ago. 2 Peter chapter 2. You read that too, Gabar, for sure. Second Peter chapter 2, and we'll get right to it. Let's read verse 3.
All right, 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 3.
Mm-hmm.
And through covetousness shall they with vain words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not.
Right. So going into false prophets rising up in the last days, right? False teachers. They're going to what? Make merchandise of you, right? If you're not careful, if you're not on your P's and Q's, keeping the commandments, those feigned words, they're going to sell you up the stream, right? They're going to make you think, oh, he or she means well. They're going to help me out with this bill that they're passing or this program they're going to create. But then you find out later on, oh man, they use this to lower my defenses, but now they're screwing me, right? They pat me on the, they patted my shoulder in front of me, but stabbed me in the back when I turned around. And you see that with, government officials, heads of companies, where they know that they have human resources, right, or souls that they're supposedly have care for, right, but they'll abuse them as opposed to build them up, and they'll pass certain laws and pass certain, push certain agendas to actually do more harm than help, and just try to milk the people for all they can. So, power in itself isn't wicked. It's just a matter of understanding it, and then what if you do have it at whatever level you have it, to wield it according to righteousness. Otherwise, it's going to be a stain on your name going forward. But now you were reading Revelations 18 earlier. Let's go back there and let's see what else is bought and sold here in Babylon, right? That's on its way out. What they call America. But we read verses 11 and 12, right? Gold, precious stones, silver, pearls. But what else is sold in this Babylon? Go back to Revelations 18 and let's read verse 13.
This is the book of Revelations, chapter 18, verse 13. And cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men.
Check that out. So look, it's going even into more detail as far as the things bought and sold, not just the plants, animals, minerals, right? But now it says what? Even things that can be used to build plants, animals, and minerals, right? Or things that take animals and minerals that you could take and make it into a finished product. Like we talk about manufacturing, right? You'll have an idea of something you want to create, like a chariot, for example. Then you have to get the raw materials needed to make the wheels, make the place where you stand, right? To make the other decorations on it. And then you need people, like it says here, slaves and souls of men, to actually build it too, right? This is what your, industrial age information age is all about, right? Where they'll figure out a process and a way to mass produce things, right? Before having people more integrated into the process, which they still are, but then through tools becoming more advanced, then you can make many things much more quicker. Like a very rudiment example would be like, one man with an ox and a plow, right? With the plot of land, he could feed a family of 5, right? Him and his ox. But then you get that same farmer and give him a tractor, right? To till the land, he can feed, more than 5. He can feed, say, 56 people, right? With him and his tractor. Now that he's taking the power and using more sophisticated tools to do more creation. So with technology, it's just they're just fancier tools that create more output. That's all. But fundamentally, you're still doing the same thing.
This prophecy, this line to Babylon, America,
Mm-hmm.
when it says it's going to come a time when people are not going to buy their marriage to themselves.
Right. Yeah.
When do you think you'll realize this? After you'll start to realize that?
When verse 11 happens, you won't miss it. Trust me. You won't miss verse 11 when it happens. What he read earlier. Because right now, it's still business as usual, right? It's still, here, London, other places. But you see in America, 9 o'clock, they open up the stock exchange. 4 o'clock comes, you see them, out on a little platform, they're doing a little smile on their clap, right? And they have somebody that works for some company, I guess that's getting some kind of some sort of notoriety for one reason or another. Like they got the CEO of this company or that company. They'll bring them on there, and then you'll see all the people that run the exchange just come out and do the little hand clap. Like, good job, guys. See you tomorrow, right? Exactly. Because
Burned up.
because
Ain't gonna be down there.
no, he's asking a legitimate question. Because you read down, it's going into what? We're going to be at war at that point. When you read above here, it's talking about what? They're going to be looking afar from Babylon, seeing that what? She's falling down. She's being burnt down. That's going to be due to war.
Yeah, I ain't thinking my products. And we think this getting in their boat and still off. Shit.
Right.
I ain't taking my products back to America. It's blown up.
So that's the third world, right?
Yeah, that's what's going to be the third war.
Right.
And they ain't going to be able to sell them.
Exactly. Because we know the future of this country tells us that in Isaiah 34th chapter, that eventually what? All's going to be here is a perpetual smoke going up, right? This place isn't going to be inhabited by people anymore. Just a perpetual smoke going up to heaven. So other places in the earth that we rebuild, after we bury all the bodies, which is going to take about 7 months. You read in Ezekiel, says it's going to take 7 months to bury all the bodies after the Third World War. Third World War. Say that 5 times fast, 7 times fast.
Look at the way this Russian, this Ukraine get their tail good, and they call on America and how Congress said just sending drones and airplanes, that's not enough. We're fighting against a superior force, and we don't have the ability to fight these guys.
Mm-hmm.
We need help.
Right. Even the EU, which is the beast that the whore rides on, the European Union, even they sent a bunch of weapons to them too, just like America did. Yeah, like articles going into it, right? What they sent and how much it would cost. But yeah, America's good for that, to where they'll build someone up, but then things don't work out. They'll leave them holding the bag and go, shame on you. It's your fault that you guys couldn't follow through, and knock the Russians out. But in the end, they're just being moved by like chess pieces by God to what? Lead up to that final battle anyway. Stages is being set. If you watch the current events, the key is to look for that prophecy. But like we're talking about now with these different levels of power, when you look at the current events and read history through this lens, you can pretty much make sense of what happened and why, because it's always been the same thing. Every time the Most High allows a nation to have dominion, it's all about what? Gaining and maintaining power. What's power? Money. Resources, which is plants, animals, minerals. Land, water, and air, right? Which is like real estate for different things. Ports, rivers, right? And then finally, the human resource, which is souls of men. That's why they spend so much effort into propaganda, media, right? To try to sway the hearts and minds of men to go this way and that way, so they can what? Use the people to build up more power for themselves. Keep you buying and selling. Like we're reading here in this Revelations 18. But does that answer your question? Why they won't be buying and selling them? Right. Because you read verse 10, real quick, Gabar, read verse 10, so we can kind of get some clarity on what's happening here. Because I know what you're saying, you're reading this just by itself, and you're thinking, this is something that we're going through right now? But no, it's talking about the fall of Babylon, but talking about it in the past tense as far as the things they used to buy and sell, which are all these different resources, these plants, animals, minerals, as well as finished products like chariots, which, today is your cars, your planes, trains, automobiles, and even people being bought and sold, right? Willingly and unwillingly, right? Being made merchandise. Read verse 10 real quick.
Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour thy judgment come. Is thy judgment come.
Right. Who's saying that? Read verse 9.
And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning.
Right. So does that help some, Yakuza? So that's what's happening here. But I went right into 11 to 13, just going to what can be considered power, right? So now that's external power, right? Power that's without. But now when you look inward, now you got, I'm gonna read the verse and then we'll close out since we're getting close to the end here. I don't want to go too late. But when you go within, because you can look at these powers on the outside, but then you can say there's three that are within, which are what? Power over one's body. Then you have power over one's soul or your mind, same thing. And finally, power over your spirit. That's what makes you. Let's get that in 1 Thessalonians. We have one verse that pretty much covers those three. But we can go into other scriptures to talk about it, but this is the main one we want to read. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 23. And I'll read this one. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 23. It reads, and the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. Wholly meaning entirely. Like when they say holistic, they talk about holistic health. And they'll try to do what we're about to read here and what the scriptures do, but they'll say, yes, holistic health is about what? Taking care of the mind, body, and spirit, right? They always mention those three together. But here we have it here in the scriptures, but from the right-hand path, sanctify you wholly or holistically. And I pray you, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Adawan, or Lord, Yahweh Shai Mashiach. See that? So those are the three you have inside you. You have your body, you have your soul, and you have your spirit. Right? So that's what makes you. And through wielding the scriptures according to righteousness, we can use the scriptures to then do like it tells you Hebrews 4 and 12, to divide soul and spirit and joints and marrow, right? We can affect these different levels, these different layers. So you could say that the Most High wants us to what? Get this one right first before we can deal with the external levels, which is, souls of men under your command, land, sea, and air under your command, plants, animals, and minerals under your command, currencies or monies under your command. See, the heathen have that, but at the expense of their own soul. The Most High wants us to what? Due to us being impoverished as a nation, to show us the importance of having our soul first and foremost, the spiritual riches first and foremost, before we can attain these other things. So it's kind of a blessing that as a people we've been brought down to where now we're more than compelled to lean on the Lord for our support, for our protection. Because what the nations are doing now that they had dominion, we did that when we had physical dominion too. We forgot the power over one's body, one's soul, one's spirit. And it became like fleshly, same as the nations. So the Most High has pretty much let them run wild, as we see. Go mad, like it says in Jeremiah, right? All because when we were given the power and the dominion, we were in the land of Israel, we abused that power. So that's the punishment that we see now. The nations who weren't given the Most High's law to wield power properly, now they're all over the place. This to be a lesson to us, to be reminded that in order for us to uphold the responsibility of our name, because you have to live up to your name. Yashar Allah, he is a prince of power. She's a princess of power. We have to get right when it comes to these laws, or these, either the laws of God, which pretty much show us or give us insight into how to govern these levels of power. So we can be found worthy to wield it. So the Most High is testing us now to say, okay, you put spiritual riches over physical. When I bless you with a little bit, how do you deal with it? If you deal with it well, then I can see that you're fit to receive more. But if you don't, then I'm going to take that little bit that I've given you away. And we have parables that even go into this, right? Like the parable of the talents, right? Where it talks about, everyone being given like a talent, and then their master coming back later and saying, what did your talent bring you? And you say, oh, your talent, I've taken your talent, multiplied it, and now created 10 talents. Or I've taken your talent and made it into 5. So, that parable is there for a reason to kind of go into what we're talking about now, as far as the importance of having what matters most, which is your soul, before you can have any of these other things. Whereas the other nations, they destroy themselves, they destroy their own soul in the pursuit of money, in the pursuit of resources, which are plants, animals, minerals, in the pursuit of land, sea, and air control, right? They get all those things, have all those things, but have defiled themselves in the pursuit of doing it, because to do it, they raped, they stole, they murdered, they deceived, they profaned, right? They oppressed to get their power. That's why they're going to lose their power and give it over to God's righteous. So let's make sure that we are ready. Spiritual riches first and foremost, then physical riches. But spiritual first and foremost, so we can be considered worthy to have that dominion with Christ, to be worthy to have that, to be heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. So we can partake in verses like this. And I'll read this real quick and then we'll close out. This is Psalms chapter 2. Psalms chapter 2. Verse 7. It says, I will declare the decree, Yahweh have said unto me, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Talking about Lord and Savior. It says in verse 8, ask of me. So the Most High is telling his son, ask of me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, in the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. See that? That's the fourth and third levels of power, right? I'll give you people power or human resources, as well as the land that they live on. It says in verse 9, thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. See that? So that's the rule we look forward to having with Christ when it comes to ruling these nations and all the lands that they dwell in. It'll pretty much be like what we read in Maccabees, that's last Sabbath, but just on a higher level, right? The nations, trying to be buddy-buddy with Jonathan, who's the new leader after Judas died in battle. But that can only happen when we're ruling according to righteousness. It's not just here in the Psalms. This is also in Revelations as well. Let me get that. So go from Psalms 2 to Revelations 2, where it quotes that same psalm. So this is Revelations chapter 2 and verse 26. Revelations 2 and 26 reads, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. See that? So even in Revelations, right? Because they say that was the Old Testament. Psalms 2 is the Old Testament. It's Revelation. It's the last book of the Bible. What was he talking about? Dominion, rulership. Not everybody, hand in hand. Everyone that calls on Jesus, rainbow coalition, like we see in these different denominations, right? Like I always laugh anytime the what do you call it? The Jehovah's Witnesses, supposedly Jehovah's Witnesses. When we're the real witnesses according to Isaiah. Give you their watchtower tracks, and you see in the picture, they show the picture of the kingdom where you see animals, where people sit next to animals, but you see, Moab there, you see Ham there, you see Ishmael there, you see all these different nations sitting around with the lions and sheep, right? Because they don't understand what that scripture is talking about. They think that scripture in Isaiah is saying, there's not going to be any more food chain. When they say the lion and the lamb shall, abide together. That's going into his nations, not going to war anymore, right? That's a metaphor, but you'll see it in the Watchtower track. United Colors of Benetton, United Nations. People sitting in the valley, with lions and lambs and wolves, and everybody's just smiling. All different nations. It's not what this scripture says here. This is talking about what? Israel taking over the other nations. This goes along with Isaiah 14, 1 and 2, which I know brothers love that verse, right? About us taking nations captive. That's what this is talking about. Just like Psalms 2. Psalms chapter 2. It says, he that overcometh to keep my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. Either at the end of our life, in this life, in righteousness, or Christ making his second coming, whichever comes first. Verse 27, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. So right there, Christ is quoting Psalm chapter 2 directly. See that? So he comes in the volume of the book. Not just the Old Testament. No, it's all one story. It's all meant to be read together as one. No separation. And that's the beautiful thing too when we go into the Psalms, because a lot of the so-called Christians, they'll have those little small Bibles, right? That'll have the New Testament only, but then they'll say Psalms and Proverbs. Then you show them Psalms like Psalm chapter 2, and they're like, that sounds kind of violent. Not my God, not my Jesus. And we're like, yeah, not your God, not your Jesus, because you got another Jesus. You got another God, but not the God of the Bible, not the Christ of the Scriptures. Yeah, so we'll end here. But once again, just to cap off the levels, which these are kind of easy to remember because you can just kind of visualize the relationship and kind of count the steps. But yeah, remember, you got money at one level, and you get the things that money can buy, which are resources, which are plants, animals, minerals. And you got places where those minerals are drawn from, which are land and water, right? Which include what? Rivers, ports, coasts, right? Like we see with these different wars that are happening now, even with the whole, like you mentioned, the whole Ukraine thing. It's all over power, right? And then finally you have who was made from that ground, right? The sons of Adam, who all nations are the sons of Adam, including the chosen people of God, right? That's your fourth level, right? Which is the human resource or souls, right? People power. And then beyond those four, you have going inward, you have the power over your body or your flesh, the power over your soul, which is your mind, right? We're supposed to govern your body. And finally, power over your spirit, which is that which makes you you, right? Regardless of whenever you were here, whether it was this life or lives before. Power over your spirit, right? Which, if we have the Holy Spirit as our guide, it can lead us to what? Have that power and to what? To take and to maintain that power, right? And we can have all those things in abundance, and we won't abuse it. We won't abuse the money. We won't abuse the resources. We won't abuse the land and the water. We won't abuse people that we have the command over. And we won't abuse ourselves because we got the law, which is the commandments, the fruits of the Spirit, which are born out of the commandments on that tree of life as our guides to what? Speak wholesome words and make wholesome decisions. And that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it, man. That's what all this is about. From the past to the present, it's always been about power. So, Yasha Allah, let's uphold our name by understanding those levels of power and learn from the other nations when they've had their time in the sun with the power, how to not wield that power, how to wield it correctly and according to righteousness so that we can rule in the kingdom and rule forever and not give it over to another people, like Daniel said, right? Our king won't be given over to other people. No more musical chairs like we got now. Okay, so we'll say a Shah Kadash once again. Happy New Moon. Hopefully everybody was edified. We'll do the closing prayers so don't keep you guys up too late, so that in case you guys got to rise up in the morning, you can be well rested. So we'll do the closing prayers, and most times we'll talk to everybody in the Friday class coming up, as well as the Sabbath service for this week. So Shah Kadash once again. Wa Laila Tawa. I'll say Brakataya Hawa by Shemi Hawashai, Laharuch HaKodash, which is blessed be the Most High, in the name of Christ, by way of the Holy Spirit. Barakatayawa by Shemi Hawashai, Asharat and Anawa Paria Gapan Tuara Aman. La Yahwa by Shemi Hawashai, Af Yashral. English translation: Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. And Magwa, Panuay Roshlem, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shemai, Lanawa, Aitha, Yemyan, Aitha, Shalak, Micah Allah, Walla Allahayim, Tazwadakim, La, Shamar Isle, Barak, Rapah, Magan, Wachazayak, Banya, Yasha Allah, Washalak, Lanawa, Rabian, Kakama, Rabian, Da'aith, Rabian, Bayana, Rabian, Sabalanwav, Rabium, Amawan, Rabium, Aqua, Rabium, Ahabium, Rabium, Haganah, Rochanaya, Wasalak, Kal, Katayanawa, La Akim, Wa Akua, Wayasha'ala, Thamyad, Waiwalam, Ba'asham, Yahawashah, the water, Aman. English translation, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'Allah, Wabatya Saparium, Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Elohoi Nawe, Yahweh, Echad. English translation, we said, Yahweh, name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books, or the school. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Now I'll do a prayer for the food, and then we'll close out. Prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Basham, Badawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakoshai, Barak, Makal, Yanawa, Shatayawath, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakarai, Yanawa, Zakar, Shal, HaKadosh, Basham, Yehoshua, for what Aman. All right, so Laila Tuba once again, Yasharala, Bashar Kadash.
Laila Tawab, Yasharala,
Continue.
Ashar Kadah.